The key about marketing is to be different and not look like a marketer, in the same way as the key to be a good sales guy is not to come across as a sales guy.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed with Thaddeus and Evan, where we have good conversation with good people. Any good conversation worth having is worth having drunk. In this case, I'm going to be sticking to the H2Os today. I had the flu yesterday, so that does happen to us mere mortals, that we do get sick every now and again. Uh,
You
anyway,
weren't sick though. Like you were completely out of it. Like
I was completely out of it. Yeah, I was like flew right into the bathroom. I didn't really leave the room, my bedroom at all yesterday. It was a tough one, and that wasn't even like, I mean, maybe slightly man cold a little bit, but not so much.
I don't
Today, if
even
I
think
was
you can
still
give
down,
yourself credit on that.
no, I think if I was still down and out, it would be man cold. But uh, I'm sucking her up here today and getting going. So, anyways, not my jam to do the intro. That's why there's laughter at the very beginning, and I almost forgot what we were doing for a second. So, but anyways, today we have on Uzair Ahmed from Cottonwood Automations, and I remember, look, I think back to the conversation that we had with him about prior to bringing him onto the show, and really just process automation and really looking at how you can be better at your processes and your operations in order to be able to systematize that. And look, those companies that aren't good at their processes and their operations in 2020, I mean, anytime for that matter, but specifically in the market and what we're seeing right now, are going to suffer, they're going to falter. And so making sure that you have a detailed process automation is going to be good. I'm excited to dive into that, especially some of their three pillars that they look at. So hiring, data tracking, building processes, right? So basically business intelligence and cleaning up your data so you can make better data informed decisions on everything that you do is a super powerful piece.
Love it. Yeah, I was listening to an audio yesterday and they were talking about how for the companies that were thriving and doing well in this last year in 2023 and growing at a rate that most companies were when others were struggling, the owners had no idea what it was that they were doing that was so exceptional. Really, what they were doing was the fundamentals extremely well, and that's processes, procedures, efficiencies within the business. So excited for this.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show. But of course, it would not be possible without our sponsors. We've got CHIIRP, we got Elite Call, we got On Purpose Media. And let's start off with CHIIRP. So transform your home service business with CHIIRP, the ultimate automation toolbox. Capture more leads, connect instantly, and skyrocket your sales. They integrate seamlessly with platforms like ServiceTitan and House Call Pro. Automated text, emails, ringless voicemails. They can also help boost your Google reviews and your customer loyalty through their proven rehash program. Schedule your demo today. Get an exclusive 25% off your first 3 months. Visit chirp.com/HSSR to get in on that right now.
Sweet. And we've got Elite Call. Ever thought about outbounding your databases to fill your dispatch boards with lucrative sales and service opportunities? Boosting memberships? Yep, they do that too. Elite Call is a US based call center that does just that. For over 20 years, their dedicated teams don't just make calls, they directly integrate appointments into your CRM and fill your dispatch boards. Don't.
Yeah. There.
Thad typed out this readout and it wasn't done right. Don't let your competition get ahead. Let Elite Call connect with your customers first. Visit elitecall.net to learn more.
My bad. That happens. Last but certainly not least, On Purpose Media. So enhance your online presence with On Purpose Media, your go-to home service marketing experts for everything web design, SEO, and PPC. Stunning user-friendly websites. Yep. Increased visibility in search engines. Of course. Targeted traffic through effective pay-per-click ads. You got her. So let's turn your online presence into a lead-generating powerhouse. Visit onpurposemedia.ca to start your digital transformation and watch your home service company thrive in the digital world. And without further ado, we'll be back with Uzair on the other side.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to HVAC Success Secrets Revealed, a show where we interview industry leaders and disruptors, revealing the success secrets to create and unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Now your hosts, Thaddeus and Evan.
Hey, welcome Uzair to the show, live from the CMPX event in Toronto, which is the Canadian version of AHR for those American folks that are listening.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Thanks for coming on. So welcome. Well, I think let's just start off with the easy layup. Walk us through your journey into getting involved into the HVAC space.
So it was a pretty random approach to getting in there. So I graduated from school in chemical engineering, and I didn't want to work for an engineer as an engineer for long. So I started my mobile mechanic business out in Western Canada. I thought I was a genius. I'd figured out that cars could be fixed on site, but no one else had thought about this. But it turns out that there was a reason for that, and it was because it's a very difficult business. So I figured out, I built my own field service management tool, which is similar to Service Titan, built out the business, learned the struggle of running a service only, effectively HVAC business, I found out later on, and got it to 23 different cities, built it up. And then it got to the point where it started running itself and things were very smooth and growing on its own. And I got bored. And at this time, I had a lot of clients, fleet clients that were HVAC businesses, and I got to build a relationship with them. And then I learned that through that process, that the experiences that I had building my mobile mechanic business was almost directly applicable to a HVAC company that did service only. But they have the difference, which is install work. They have the crown jewel that I was missing. And so I found that I was I started helping out a few of my clients with their business. And then I realized that there's a real opportunity over here. And then I expanded from there. And that's my story into HVAC.
Well, in the experience of building a business too, right? A lot of times you're like, "Well, I've never built a business. I'm just going to try this out." Well, you already built one, right? It's the same
Yeah.
thing. It's a service offering. It's just a different service offering, right? Mm-hmm.
Oh, and it's
But
still the mobile
the
to
operations are the same too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely. When you looked at those home service companies that were clients of yours that you were trying to help out, and what was the missing elements that you saw they really needed and lacked, and you were able to fill in those gaps?
So I feel like a lot of businesses were run by owners that hustled their way out of bad business habits. So they were just really good at selling, and there was no processes. Everything was the owner's head. They would have software, but they weren't using the software properly, or maybe a fraction of it, if they were using it. And they had really no idea what their numbers were until they did their looked at their QuickBooks after like 2 or 3 months and like, oh, I actually lost money or I made money, right? And then this seeing that these guys were making money running businesses like that, where in my business, I had to be hyper efficient with no mistakes just to quick out a profit. I was like, hey, there's an opportunity here. And that's what I started helping them out with, just building their business up from scratch and then maximizing the technology that's out there to automate certain processes, which are just a drain on everybody.
Mm. Hyper efficiency. It's an interesting term to be able to be hyper efficient inside your business, to be able to just eke out a profit. In what ways with HVAC businesses have you seen the biggest lack of efficiencies?
Usually it's in the lead follow-up, answering phone calls, making sure you answer the phone calls properly, make sure you're following up on leads and especially service appointments. When you go out there, you do a quote. Uh, are you actually following up if they don't convert right there on site? And I know people do like their regular 1 or 2 phone calls as a follow-up, but you need to have some sort of automation there because people are obviously going to forget or they get busy or things like that. And I know this firsthand because I was thinking of getting a new heat pump. So I called a bunch of different contractors to my house to give me quotes. Sales process was fine depending on the business, but there was no follow-up at all. And I was a pretty hot client. And I'm gonna buy the person that follows up at least 5 times. No one did. Not a single person followed up. I think it was 2 follow-ups and that was it.
Wow.
And not
So
only that, I was trying to buy it so much. I'm like a willing buyer, and I've had so many people come to my house and no one's followed up. And I'm just like
Mhm.
I just started calling other people. I'm like, just come fix it for me now. I just want to test these guys out.
right, but it
Like,
is a
they
good
don't
point.
deserve my
Like,
business.
well, you think about that, people do get busy, right? And like you think about the consumer sentiment and what's out there. I mean, soft consumerism right now for it. Well, there's going to need to be a lot of follow up in some certain instances. So I guess in what ways would you look at automating that? Like, how can somebody go about and say, all right, well, I know that my follow up is shit. I mean, first off, if you have a good salesperson, they should be following up, and a good salesperson knows they need to follow up and follow up and follow up and follow up. Regardless of that, looking at building in an automation into that, where would one start? What would be something that they would look to automate? Would it just be ringless voicemails, or are you talking like text messages or phone calls? Like, how do you do that?
I don't like to just do like a blanket thing. It depends on what their business needs are, right? Where the problems are. So one of the big things that I like to, the obvious things I like to do for a business is install Slack. Get everyone on Slack. Stop sending to their text messages. And then connect your CRM with Slack so that when jobs are posted or things that need to be, reminders and all that stuff show up on Slack. And everyone knows what's going on. So, for example, most companies, they have one person at the office text the technicians, right? And no one knows what they said to each other. And that creates a level of inefficiency in a business because now if one person, only two people know and someone else has to know, how they don't know. But when you have everything on a Slack, if you use Slack for everything, that way everyone knows what's going on in the company. And then that's just a starting point. Within Slack, you can build so many different automations, right? Like another example is depending on the weather, you're going to run different ads. If it's extremely cold, it'll automatically run a set of Google ads for cold weather. If it's extremely hot, it'll run Google ads for a certain type of weather. Or if your schedule is full, it's going to stop running Google ads, things like that.
No, I love that, and that's something we've been talking about with a variety of different vendors on as well. I know we talked to Amanda from Profit Fill down in where were we again?
We're in Los Angeles, but they're from Calgary.
LA. There we go. Yeah, and it was same concept, right? And I know Action Furnace, we talked about it with them when we had them on the podcast as well. That's something that they do and they implement in their business is being able to book out a calendar based off of availability. I think one of the symptoms of all of this is that it's really easy to get lazy during good times. And 2020, 2021, 2022 they were really good times to be in a home service business. It was really easy to make sales. It was really easy to get leads and get the phone to ring. People had extra income. The economy was booming. Inflation was through the roof. And as all that was happening, people were spending a lot of money and free to do that. It's also exposing a lot of weaknesses within companies now, and ours included, right? And we've been able to identify what those are and start to make those improvements and those changes. But what's kind of your process to start poking holes in a company to see where those inefficiencies are? And what questions do you start asking of an owner to identify where there's areas of opportunity for improvement?
The first thing we look at is the numbers, right? And I don't want to look at your revenue or top line, every stuff like that. I want to look at your conversion rate. I want to know your lead time to connect ratio. I need to know quote follow-ups percentage. Like I need to know the key metrics that together lead to the revenue number. Like how do you get there in the first place, right? And a lot of people don't have that information ready for me. So the first thing is like, hey, all right, so you want to double your revenue, or you want to grow this, or you want to do this. How do we break it down to actionable steps every single day that you have control over? That's not a lagging indicator that we can focus on. So do we need to increase the number of leads coming in, or do we have enough leads coming in? Do we need to increase the conversion rate? Is our sales process poor? Do we never answer our phone calls? Like those are the kind of questions I need to understand before I decide on what to work on first.
Something that and I'm trying to remember the name. Laura Kelly, Josh and Laura Kelly, Growth Clover. I can't remember the name that they said this was, but they have a daily action report or daily organization report. It's essentially breaking it down to, okay, what's my goal right now? Okay, and this actionable thing and measuring it daily is the thing that that's super important. DP report, that's what it is, daily progress report. So the daily progress report is super important, right? And it's a super important metric. Now, I think there's daily progress reports for different things. In this particular instance, what would you say would be the key metrics and key variables that somebody's going to want to keep an eye on daily?
Well, number of calls and booking rate, average revenue per technician, the things that you have control over, time to connect to new leads, And then those, like I like to focus on things that you have control over, right? I don't want to, revenue is a nice, profit is nice, but what are the actions that will get you that number? Like if I told you, why are you guys, why is our missed call rate so high? That's a number you can control, right? Number of calls coming in, like that's a bit variable. Like as much as we love to be like we can control number of calls coming in, there's so many variable aspects to it, right? But conversion rate, like are you booking 90% of your jobs, or are you only booking 10% of your leads? Those kind of things is what I would focus on. And then the number of follow-ups per contact or per lead that's been sent out. Things that you have control over. How many outbound calls did you have today?
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of important ones in there, right? I mean, there's a lot of different metrics. And here's the thing is you got to measure these things daily, because if you're not measuring them daily, performance monitors performance gained when you think about that. And if you can monitor the right performance, the right metrics, the right numbers, now you can impact that change within your business. If you're only doing it monthly and you're on a lagging report, good example, I'm just going to use profit and loss statements, right? So a lot of times, I mean, this is how we do it in our business, and we're not quite at the point of going less than this, but a lot of companies, and to go back to what you said, they haven't looked at 2 to 3 months. Well, some companies will get their profit loss on the 15th of the month for the following month. Well, now you're already halfway through this month. How can you enact change on a quicker level if you're only getting it every month and it's delayed, right? And so looking at ways to be able to pull this data in either in real time or the next day based off the previous day's data is going to be a super important thing. If somebody's never done this before, they're like, well, shit, I don't even know where to even begin. Because there are some people that are out there that have never done this.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell them?
I would say open up an Excel spreadsheet, look at the numbers that you care about, and just manually edit it. Like have your phone person put in every phone call in an Excel spreadsheet. Don't overcomplicate it. And I'm actually like kind of torn about that. I'm like, do we want an automatic dashboard that pulls in information from everywhere, or just force an Excel spreadsheet which forces you to manually get the information yourself? Because the act of manually getting the information, there's something to that, I think.
Right. I remember doing cold calls in the previous business that we were in, and I had literally a piece of paper, and it was I literally wrote down ticks on the paper, and I did that until my paper was full, and then I entered into an Excel sheet after the fact to be able to compute numbers, etc. Right?
Yeah.
But like it can be that simple too, to be able to just okay, write it down, and you know what? You're not going to get 100% accuracy because human nature, right? You're going to miss a few things, but if you're getting 90% accuracy, well, 90% accuracy on a metric that you just started tracking is better than no metric to track in the first place.
Exactly. Just so you have an idea, right? And if you're tracking it the same way, you can also see trends on it too. But just please track it, because like that's the difference in a professional company that can grow really fast and a company that's just going to stay at 500 to 1 million forever.
The thing I love about you saying like start with an Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper, it's not allowing yourself to create an excuse as to why you can't start it today. Right.
Yeah.
To say, oh, I need to have it automated, or I need this perfect dashboard that I can have up on my wall and displayed around the office and all of this. Like, yeah, that's the ideal. But what can we do in the meantime to make sure that we're starting to pay attention to this now and not wait for that?
And a lot of people make that mistake where they're just like, well, I don't have any information, so whatever. I'll wait.
Right.
I have 1,000 other more important things to worry about.
What's the saying that I always use, Evan? Done is better than perfect.
Something like that.
Hey, look, so that like the done is better. That was a tough thing for me to wrap my head around. Or this is done is better than perfect, because I like to some instances of some things is the type A part of me wants to make sure that is dialed in and fully detailed and up into like the nth degree. But I mean, you can edit to editing's sake, right? You might as well just have a done is better than perfect mentality at some point. Now, I'm not saying you do shit stuff. You have to actually have a decent output from it. But I think when more people can wrap their head around done is better than perfect, you'll start to see progress and change.
Speed of implementation.
Yes, sir.
It's a key thing to growing fast, right?
Right. It definitely is.
It's like be quick, but don't be in a hurry.
Right. Hustle, but be patient.
Right.
Yeah.
My mind went dirty on those. I don't know about yours, but hey. All right, perfect time to go into the random question generator. So, random question generator brought to you by On Purpose Media, where we're more plugged into digital trends than a teenager with their first smartphone. Uh, teenagers with smartphones. I mean, they probably won't have smartphones by the time my kids are teenagers. They'll probably like bump on their wrist and it'll pull up a screen in front of them. So the random question generators are one of my favorite parts of the show. You don't get to know what the questions are. You just get to choose. Do you want question 1, 2, or 3? I ask it to you. It's random. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So do you want question 1, 2, or 3?
2.
2. If you were a soup, what kind would it be?
Chicken noodle soup. That's the first thing came to mind. I've never thought about that.
That's why it's a random question.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, do you go with tomato or do you go with mushroom? But you know, the cheap what is it? Somebody was saying the most Canadian meal that you could have, and somebody was like, it's pork chops in frozen green beans. You dump a can of Campbell's mushroom soup over top of it, and you just put it in the oven and you bake it. I'm like, how is that the most Canadian meal that you've ever had?
You
I
know,
don't know.
I'm
We
not a
used to eat it.
big
We used to
fan
eat
of
it growing
soup.
up. So.
That's the thing. I don't like wet foods. It's always been my thing. It's just wet foods not my thing.
All right. The more you know. So what you're saying is don't get soup for Uzair when you're out. Make sure that it's a nice steak or something like that. Something that's
All I
solid, no
ask.
liquids. Yeah.
Simple
Yeah.
things in life.
Right. The simple pleasures. So one thing that the automation part of things in hiring, data tracking. I mean, we kind of already talked a little bit about data tracking, building processes. In terms of looking at that part of things in let's talk about hiring for starters, right? And looking at some of you always hear the businesses saying, I can't find good people. And then you hear other businesses saying, I have too many applicants and I have great people. There's a big juxtaposition between the two of those. How can one person go from the first person, I can never find good work, to the latter saying, I have great people and I have no issues. I'm filled with resumes all the time.
Okay, I have heard I can't find people for the longest since I got in this industry. I've heard that over and over again. And then I asked them, why can't you find good people? And they haven't even bothered to post up an ad. So I am now like, when people tell me that, I've always like dug deeper into that question. And I have found most of these guys haven't even attempted to hire people. They're just like, oh yeah, I'm like, I have an ad. And you see this ad hasn't been updated since 7, 8 months ago. And there's a bunch of applicants that haven't even looked at it. Or they're just like, I can't find anybody, but they've made no attempt whatsoever. So I'm like, unless you've done what I've done, because I'm for my other business, I'm still hiring technicians. We go through the ringer. We have Indeed ads, we spend the money on it, running Facebook ads, building a brand around hiring, building referral programs. At that point, I can say I cannot find good people. Then I got to look at an LMIA and do all that stuff, right? But for a lot of people in HVAC, there's two things. You need to build a recruiting brand, right? So you got to be a good place to work effectively. And I always say, always be recruiting. And that means just always having ads in the background, looking for workers, have the referral program, have all that stuff. And then when someone applies, respond back to them really quickly too. Have those phone calls, pretend like you're going to be busy soon, right? And invest in people before you actually have the work is also a good one, because the biggest mistake that I made before is I used to be really busy before I hired someone, and then it would never line up properly. You send this guy and he just gets super busy. But I find that if you hire someone earlier, you're eventually going to get busier, but there's a slow ramp up process. And we do that slow ramp up process, it works way better. But to summarize, from what I experienced so far, people say I can't find anyone, they just haven't tried hard enough.
I mean, probably very accurate. I mean, I haven't done the data and looked at it either, but I mean, it is true. Like, okay, well, where are you actually hiring your people from, right?
Well, and then even when you think back to what we listened to when we were at Epic last week, so we went and sat in on Tommy Mello's message that he gave, and he talked about A players. It's like, you always need to be looking out for A players. You have no idea where they're going to come from. So you always need to be recruiting and always be looking at it. I love what you said too. Respond quickly. Treat it like it's a sales lead. The difference between a B player and an A player when it comes to a technician is dramatically different in terms of the end result.
Huge. Yeah. it's wild. Like it's such a crazy number. Same number of leads, same number of work, but an A player is like doing 2 to 3 times the revenue of a B or C. It's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just
one
I've
A
seen
player
I've
is the
seen
same
it.
as three B players. Like
I
it's
believe that
yeah,
100%.
yeah.
It's the craziest thing. We talk about it like it's just it's a thing, right? But I want to emphasize it is such a big deal, game changer to the business.
Mm-hmm. Well, even to go back with the Tommy Mellows thing too, right? And that always be recruiting aspect of things. What he says when he finds a good server at a restaurant, for example, it's not the hey, are you looking for work? Here's my card, call me. It's like, hey, I want that person. So he grabs their info and he follows up with them and he tries to get them in for an interview. Say, hey, come for a ride along, and he follows up with them until he gets them in for a ride along, right? And so it's not just waiting for people and waiting for things to come to you. It's actually going out there and hunting and actively recruiting it, right, into the business and having that recruiting mindset. But the one thing you mentioned was a referral program, and I don't think this gets enough conversation or enough light into daily conversations itself. So, what have you seen for success in terms of a recruiting referral program?
Just be a great place to work. You can't. No referral program is going to work. You can throw all the money in the world at it and whatnot, but people aren't going to burn their social capital unless you actually are a good place to work and you're doing well and people like working there. That I think works the best. I know it's not the answer you're looking for in terms of like it's not a cool answer, but it's a real answer. It's the same thing with referral programs for a company, right? People are going to refer you if they like you, even if you don't have a referral program. Referral program is accelerant, but it's useless unless you have something worth referring. So I think if people would have that idea and you just make sure that they really have a great place to work.
In terms, I mean, that's culture, right? I mean, that starts from the ground up, and when you build that great culture, people want to be there and they want to get their friends to work there as well. Do you incentivize referrals at all? Have you seen any success or people doing a specific thing in terms of incentivizing referrals?
I used to have an incentive program for referrals, but I found out there was no need for it. I was just spending money that I didn't have to spend because people were just referring their technicians, their friends to it. And I was like, they were going to refer anyways. I don't know why I need to spend this extra money on it. So that's kind of like that's where I'm at. That's my experience with referral programs. It's like, if you have a great place to work, you're providing the highest wage in the industry. You give them there's good culture. There's no micromanagement. They're going to refer their friends to it no matter what. So I took that budget and put it into Indeed instead.
There you go. And then you get even more people coming in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was my experience.
I mean,
everyone's got a different experience though, right?
Yep.
Well, and I remember when Thad and I worked for other companies, we talked about having referral programs for hiring, and our quote unquote sales pitch back to the team was, we can either pay Indeed or we can pay you. Like, where do you want that money to go? I'd rather give that money to my team and incentivize them to go and find more people who would be interested. And yes, like you said, if you don't have the culture that they're going to be excited about referring you, then it's a moot point. Money is not going to make up for that. So you need to have both, in my opinion. It's what's the driver of it? Are you talking about it? And then the fun thing too is when you're promoting it and you're talking about, oh, this is our top tech for the week. Here's what they did. Oh, by the way, they were referred by so-and-so and they were referred by so-and-so. And you show this whole tree and train of referrals, and it just becomes part of the culture as well, is that we continually add to our team through referrals.
I found that money talks the loudest. So like, just pay a lot of money, so for when I work with my clients, my goal is to use automation, outsourcing labor in the head office, and just making things super efficient in the head office, so that they become very profitable at their core, so that they can afford to hire and pay their technicians a top salary. That's it. At the end of the day, people care. People will leave. I've seen people leave for like $1 or $2 an hour more. So I'm like, if you just pay the most, that will make up for a lot. Pay the most, don't make their life miserable, and you'll have plenty of referrals that way. And hire the
It
best.
definitely helps.
Yeah, and
Definitely
even
helps.
even
And
if you
people
have
will turn it down if you have a great culture.
correct, and that's what I was just about to say, is that if you have a phenomenal culture and you have a great culture and you have everything built on there, they will be okay working for $1 or 2 less, because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily always about money. I was seeing a picture the other day, or saw a picture. I always mix those two words up from proper grammar. But there was a picture that I read, and it was a quote and saying, "Your boss and your significant other are the two most impactful people in your life. And so you better choose both wisely." And so if you have a bad boss, but you think about that, right? You think you spend a third of your time working in a day, right? And if you're working a 7-hour day or an 8-hour day, it's 24 hours a day. You're spending a third of your day working. The other third you're likely spending with your spouse and your kids, and then the other third you're sleeping. And so you think about that time frame. If you have a bad boss, if you have a bad place to work, if you have a bad culture, people aren't going to want to be there.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I
good
I
culture
I
isn't always
haven't
necessary.
experienced I haven't experienced that yet in my career so far. Like I hear stories about bad places to work. I'm like, I can't believe some people would work there who acts like that, right? But I've never like experienced that myself. Maybe I got lucky in life, or yeah, I haven't
Helps when
experienced
you're
that or
running
been
your
in
own
any part
company.
of any organ.
Right?
That helps. I
Yeah.
guess that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like I have worked at bad
That's
cultures,
one more thing.
not like super super bad, but in places where the culture was shit and I didn't like it. And that was the only reason, one of the only reasons that I left that industry and the business that I was in, is because the culture that it was in the office place. Hated it.
Mm,
Didn't want to be there. Loved the
no,
work,
makes sense.
hated the culture.
I guess I was such a silly thing to say for me. I've been my own boss for such a long time. I'm like, oh, never experienced this thing people talk about.
It is a lot better. It's a lot easier to impact culture because now you can run it how you want to run it, right?
So we talked a lot about different areas of the business to focus on, different things to track, different things to look at. When we start to make the move into automations, and how can we take the manual labor out of this? What are some of the first areas you look to start to implement some of these automations?
One of the first areas that I look for is lead management, quote, customer follow-ups, connecting the different, like connecting your CRM to your QuickBooks, for example, or connecting your marketing software to your field service management. Just like making sure all the software that you use connects to each other. So if there's any manual copy paste that you're doing, we get rid of that right away. That's one thing you should not be doing, right? Other stuff then becomes like, hey, what project are we going to work on? Are we going to work on a uh, retention project? That's one of the first things, like retention, right? Like if you already have a customer base, how do we make sure that when anyone uses your company, you will always stay top of mind forever? So those are kind of like the first things I work on, but it depends on the business. Like some people are so far advanced where you start doing things like, hey, how do we automate your Google ads based on what your schedule is like? Versus some people are so far behind, it's like, how do we just stop copying pasting?
Yep.
Hmm.
That's where it comes down to,
Um,
right?
yeah, of course. When it comes to retention, what sorts of things are you looking to automate?
For
Because you
retention,
said you were talking about
just
retention of clients. So
yeah. So one of the first things is like to send text messages and emails asking for reviews. You can set up an automation for that. Some CRMs do. People don't maximize it. Make sure it's multiple emails. Make sure you're sending emails for maintenance, right? Maintenance work needs to get done. Make sure the emails that are being sent out is automatic based on the previous job date, or just send them when this. Put them on a list. Put them on an automation that sends them emails every 6 months. So you know that you guys still exist. Um, Sometimes you want to sell a membership program. Get them on when they book a job and they haven't signed up for a membership. Get them on a certain list, but you keep on talking about that membership program. Those are the kind of things that I mean when I'm talking about marketing in general or retention in general.
Multiple touch points about various different things, right? The more touch points that you can have with an end consumer, the higher the ability to remain sticky in their mind.
Exactly. You got to find that balance for doing it too much. Like text messaging, limit to the text messaging, because that's like a 100% open rate, but it's also 100% annoyance rate. So emails are my go-to.
Hmm. So how would you differentiate between, because text messages, I mean, you hear a lot of people talk that text messages are the next email and they're their bread and butter and they want to automate a lot of text messages for those sorts of things. How do you differentiate between where to go towards texting somebody and where do you go towards emailing somebody?
If it's like an urgent thing, or you're talking about um, I try to text as little as possible, even though it has a high open rate. It does annoy people way more than an email does, right? So people will be looking at their phone, and be like, "Oh, look, the text message from XYZ." Unless you have something good to say, don't be like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you 5% off your book right now." Like things like that will ruin your brand, right? But if you're gonna say, "Hey, we talked to your technician, Jeff came by, he said to follow up in 6 months because of your XYZ." If it's a customized text message that looks like it would be for you, like someone actually wrote it, that's worth sending, I think. That was a difference that I learned when I was sending text messages. When you make it customized, that you actually sent it for them. So you can automate the job and the name and everything, but it has to look real and people will mostly respond to it or take it seriously. But if it's like a generic text, like reply R to stop or whatever, it doesn't hit the same, I think.
No, I think you're right on that, right? Like I think about myself and the consumer, right? Depending on your market too, depending on the age of the customer too. Like I'm sure there's a bunch of different variables that go into the demographics of the individual. I mean, but like I think about myself and in me, you're right. If you're just sending me a 5% offer, I'd be like pound sand, right? A custom one, because I mean I get a lot of text messages in a day, right? You are right, the ones that are spammy people don't like, and then now with A2P down in the States, you've got to be sure on what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. So very good point. I like it.
Just value marketing, right? Don't annoy people.
Right.
Don't waste their time
Right.
with a 5% off offer. I've seen it.
That being
So
said,
I'm only saying that because I've seen it, right?
right?
Oh, 100%. How do you balance that communication then to make sure that you're adding value more than you're just asking for a sale?
Value can also just be funny. Like you don't have to like teach them about anything. I've realized that I used to write these newsletters that were just really funny, and I spent like a lot of time making jokes and everything. And people loved it. They like loved looking at it. It was just too much work. I can't be not a 24/7 comedian out here, right? But I was sending these newsletters, and people were really, really happy with it. They replied back, "I love this." Like, it doesn't have to be talking about cars. I would talk about the most random things, and they just liked it. So that was a really successful strategy that I had. It was just the effort was too high on it. But
Right.
if someone has got a knack for writing good emails, I think you should just go for it. And I was sending one every month.
Hmm.
That was a
Oh,
really good
and
time
that's
for
top of
Instagram
mind,
at that
right?
time.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah,
you're
it's
not
top of
selling
mind.
anything in that regard, right?
Yeah, because I started just talking about also community newsletters. If you are in a particular community and you write and you like, the one thing all your customers have in common is they all are part of one area. So if you write about things that are like relevant to them because they live in XYZ, or things that you've seen, or even adventures or things you've learned at your job about HVAC stuff, or I was at this client's house and I realized they had this, and I thought maybe other people have this problem too, and you make it entertaining and fun and short and sweet, and do that often enough, you're going to have people be like, "That's an expert that I'll look at their emails, I'll open it up." But if you just like send promotional emails all day, or just bland templated emails, the key about marketing is to be different and not look like a marketer, in the same way as the key to be a good sales guy is not to come across as a sales guy, right? So just don't let people put you in a box, is my advice.
Love it. My head was just spinning around like making a recruiting ad that started off with you tearing off the jersey of your favorite football team or your local football team, whatever, of the area, right? Be like, yeah, are you as frustrated with this team as I am? Great. Are you as frustrated with your job as you are with this team? Cool. Then you should probably look us up, right? And then you tie it all in.
Great idea, yeah.
Unless the team is actually doing really good, then probably not. You have to choose
Well, then
one of the teams that isn't doing good in the area,
You guys are in
well, then
Calgary, so you're fine for a while.
right? Uh, I would
You spread it
love to
around.
tear apart. I would love to tear apart a Calgary Flames jersey just for the sake of tearing apart a Calgary Flames jersey. Have an Oilers jersey underneath it.
No,
That's
but you
funny.
do need to get creative in that messaging. And I remember when we had Jody Underhill on, and he runs a recruiting agency down in the States. And one of the things that he has in his funnel is a text message with a picture of a dog on it. And it says, hey, every time that an application gets filled out, whatever the dog's name is, gets a treat. Don't leave him hanging like he really wants one, right? And then it's something that's funny, it's comical, and it's added into the sales funnel for, in that sense.
That's our referral program. Our referral program is that too. It's like we don't give you $25. We give this dog at a shelter $25, a picture of a dog at a shelter. That's
Nice.
what I found worked really well. Because I
I
was
love
like,
it.
no one really cares about $25, but everyone cares about dogs and charity. And like that's the one charity that pretty much everyone cares about. And animal shelter. It's like, boom,
No, not
25
cats.
bucks.
Not cats. Sorry for cat. Sorry, cat lovers.
I love cats.
I mean, I never own one. I'll pet a cat, but I don't want a cat in my house. So
No, my wife was not a cat person, and we got 2 cats, and now she's like, it's that you can't trust cats. If you're not into cats, you just can't trust them. You never know what they're gonna do, right? But if you have your own, it's different.
yeah, they will still do. Like we grew up with a cat in the house, and even in that, like they will still they'll look at you in the eye and they'll just do something. It's like a toddler. Don't do that, bam. They do it anyways, right? So, Jesus. Private chat. Well, hey, I know that you have the party coming up at CMPX. Talk a little bit about Cottonwood Automations. How can you help businesses? Obviously, we've kind of alluded to it all throughout, but we want you to provide a lot of value. Let's give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about what you guys do and how you can help.
Yeah, so at Cottonwood Automation, we partner up with businesses. So my goal is to stay with businesses for the long term. Since I started, all my clients have been here because there's multiple stages that your business goes through, right? So if you have $1 million, you have certain needs. When you have $4 million, you've got different needs. I've seen the growth throughout, so I'm the one that will help you get to that level by, implementing the right. A lot of business owners I find are told what to do. They have all these coaching options, like you can read all these books, but you're too busy and no one actually teaches you how to do it. But we're the ones that come in and actually implement what you should be doing with your business and make sure it becomes successful. So we're not just the coaches and tell you what to do, with the actual implementers of your business. So whether it be automation, setting up the right marketing, recruitment, anything, like a business Swiss Army knife.
Yes,
And me
love
and my
that.
team will come in there and just implement the projects for you.
Well, and if you want to get in touch with them, check them out, cottonwoodautomation.com or Uzair, UZAIR at cottonwoodautomation.com. But before we wrap up, we do have one final question here for you. What is one question that you wish people would ask you more, but don't?
It's a great question. It's one of my sales questions too. It's a good question. I haven't really thought about that. I think that one thing that people do ask me is like, do you only do automation? And the answer to that is no. I want to solve your business problems. And automation is just a tool in my toolbox. It's not the end all be all of what I do, right? So sometimes it's like going back to the drawing board and rewriting that process for you, or figuring out, do you even do this in the first place? So it's a whole digital operations is an all encompassing thing.
No, makes sense. I like that. Because really,
I love it.
It's
It's filling the holes right in the funnel, making sure that
Yeah.
everything's getting down to the bottom and you're being as efficient as possible in doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, right? And there's many tools to get there.
Yeah. Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for adding value, being
Thanks for having
concise
me.
and to the point, getting a lot of information out there. I got a lot of notes here that I want to follow up on. So thank you so much.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, guys.
No worries.
Yeah, no worries.
And until next time.
Cheers.
Bye.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed. Before you go, 2 quick things. First off, join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/HVAC Revealed. The other thing, if you took one tiny bit of information out of this show, no matter how big, no matter how small, all we ask is for you to introduce this to one person in your contacts list. That's it. That's all. One person. So they too can unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Until next time, cheers.